Hey everyone, this is the Failures and Wins podcast. I'm your host, Victor Dwyer, and this is where we get the latest people, the latest entrepreneurs, and where we just talk about their journey, how they got there, and then we have Elizabeth on today, and she's going to go through her journey, how she got here, how she got into this whole Amazon mess, and then we're going to dive into Amazon advertising. Where's the numbers that actually matter? What are the Q4 strategies and tactics to implement for Prime Day 2? And we'll dive right in. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. It's always a blast.
Thank you. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in this, and
Yeah.
how you kind of got into Amazon.
Yeah, I love it. The whole Amazon mess. I think that sounds about right. I think all
Yeah.
of us kind of fell into it in a way. Some people were intentional, which is awesome. I applaud you. I was not. So
Yeah.
we started out in the world of, oh, there's this Amazon thing, and working from home sounds amazing, and I'd love
Yeah.
to, be able to have that dynamic. So cool. So let's figure out something. So
Mhm.
tried a whole bunch of different things, and when I say tried, I really mean tried, hey, let me try. I think there's a lot of things that if you doubled down on it and you worked on it, you can get them to work. Now some things are a lot harder than others. There is
Yes.
that fact, but there's a lot of things that people have made work. But if you're like, hey, let me just dabble in this, when the going gets tough, you either have to double down, or in our case what
No,
we did
no
is
one to,
just kind
no
of
one to fold. No
fold
one
it
to
a
fold.
little bit.
Yeah.
But through that wonderful journey was led to the world of Amazon, which I kind of find interesting because everyone knows about Amazon. I think pretty much everybody shops on Amazon, but it's almost like until you go through that curtain of, oh, there's this whole world of selling on Amazon, it's almost like it's below the surface and you have no idea it's even there. And now I'm in this world. I'm like, I cannot believe how big and how wide and how many amazing people are involved in this. So really, at least got a glimpse of what that looked like behind the curtain. And then somewhere along the way, found out that one, I actually like ads and I like looking at data and spreadsheets, which is very useful in my line of work.
Oh,
And then just started out helping people with their ads, and just really grew from there.
yeah, that's amazing. And if you're in Amazon, you have to be some type of data nerd. Like you have to have some level of nerdiness in order to get in this space and be successful, because you have to
Yeah.
love data in order to like succeed on Amazon. And I feel like we're all a little bit of data nerd. I'm a little bit more on the extreme side. Both of us are probably a little bit on the extreme side when it comes to data nerdiness. But in order to succeed on Amazon, it's a little bit. I feel like everyone has a little bit in there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you really, really need to know your numbers. And I tell a lot of people now, because they're just getting more competitive. The platform's definitely maturing. And especially me being on the ad side, this trajectory has been since the birth of the first pay-per-click platform. I mean,
Sure.
Google, everyone was freaking out. Oh my goodness, cost per clicks are cheap, and you could rank through ads, and then they took that away. And then slowly but surely the platform matured, and then it's just insanely competitive. Same
Yeah.
thing with Facebook ads. I mean, and now we're seeing that trajectory again with Amazon ads. So I think a lot of times we get stuck in the Amazon bubble and forget that this trajectory happens all the time as platforms mature, and we
Yeah.
really just need to get savvier with how you're doing things. So I still think there's room
Mm.
for new sellers on the platform. I still think there's room to win even given the current market, but it's become more and more incumbent upon sellers to know their numbers and really their margins. So where a lot of people are getting squeezed is in their margins, and I sympathize with that. I really do, because I
Yeah.
get that Amazon's becoming more pay to play, so the ads are becoming more of a necessity. They're getting more
Mhm.
costly, and then at the same time shipping costs are going up. Amazon's raising fees, so it's really like they're getting squeezed from both ends. And then in today's a little bit volatile consumer market, it's difficult to raise prices, so then you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And really, if you know your numbers, you know where you can make safer bets. And I tell
Yeah.
people before, I'm like, you should have known your numbers. I don't care how good and how much of a blue ocean the market is. Like, you should always know your numbers. It's just, if you fudged it a little bit in the past, you still ended up having money in the bank. Where now, and it's like, honestly, if you really knew your numbers back then, you probably could have added quite a bit to your bottom line. But, everything was hunky-dory, money was coming in, so it wasn't a problem. And now it's becoming more of a problem. So again, it always was important, but it's becoming more and more important.
Especially as inflation increases, the supply chain's messed up. We have the cost of shipping overseas increasing dramatically. It's really important. And what surprises me is that that how many people don't know their lifetime value or their repeat purchase rate. Like
Yes.
if you have a subscription product and you don't know that number, your advertising strategy is completely different. For example, for product A, you might, like, if let's say if you're just looking at ACoS, like if between product A and product B and you have the same ACoS, you'd be like, okay, let's push those the same, no problem. But
Yeah.
if you take that a step back and look at product A has a $50 lifetime value and product B has a $150 lifetime value, that's a big difference. That means you
Oh,
should be
yeah.
pushing this product B at least 3 times more in spend. But if you're not looking at those numbers, you're not doing that. You're just pushing them exactly the same. So
Yeah.
rather than taking the automated approach of just like automatic bidding and everything else, like what everyone else is doing, that's easy, sponsored products, and they just push that, and that's they just call that it. There's so much more to looking at the data, actionable data,
Yeah.
making decisions off of that, which really drives strategy on your Amazon ads. That makes it where no one else is doing that. No one else, and that
Yeah.
makes it where the competition on that is a lot less because you make those
Yeah.
actual decisions.
100%. Yeah, I could not agree more. But that requires a brand owner who fully understands their logistics and their numbers.
True.
And then
Yep.
it also takes oftentimes some sort of agency or ad partner that has the ability to, really just bring that wealth and data. Because, I mean, calculating lifetime value, like, you got to know how to dig into the reports, or there are some
Yep.
software that offer insights into lifetime value, or maybe some automated reporting, but it required somebody to go in, take a look at the reporting, calculate that out, and then be able to bring that forward. So it really takes all hands on deck, and then also trust between both partners, knowing that the brand owner really understands like their costs and what they need to run their business. And then, we bring to the table, or you all do, like, hey, here's the data we've accumulated. This is what we're reading here. Let's game plan on this, very much us against Amazon, us against the category, and then determining what's our play to win this.
100%. 100%. And besides lifetime value, so that was like one actionable thing to kind of make decisions off, like where to put your money and things like that. What are some other KPIs top of mind that you have that are really decision makers, actionable data that you should be looking at to kind of drive your strategy within the advertising realm?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's some things that I can touch on, definitely on the ad side. Like, really, when it comes down to it, the levers that I pull are on the ad side. So although there's, again, there's the pricing, there's what's your cost of goods sourcing, can you get a good relationship with your manufacturer and drive down your cost of goods. Like, there's ways that you can, squeeze things a little bit harder on the brand side. But really, when it comes down to it, the things that I'm pulling is going to be the ad side, understanding how that's influencing our client margins. So although ACoS in a lot of circles has become like, it's kind of, it's like the old school, you shouldn't be looking at your ads like that. I'm not saying, what I will say about that is, yes, you need to look at ACoS in context. There's always context. Context is key. I don't think we should completely throw it out, though. Like, it's still a good number if you want to see how profitable your ads are just within your ad sphere. It's not going to look at the rest of the account, but it will give you a good idea of how your ads are running. The other number we like to look at is total ACoS numbers, TACoS, which you probably heard about a lot. It's a great number. It gives you a background into, how your ads are relating to your entire account. And so, like, your total sales. So, like, what percentage of your total sales are you spending on ads, which is super important because, if that number creeps up, you're spending a larger and larger portion on your ads. But the one number that I've been trying, I think, to bring to the forefront a little bit more is what I'm calling your ad sale percentage, or like the percentage of your total sales that are attributed towards your ads. And what I find that this helps put into context is how reliant is your account on ads to drive sales. Because the trickiest and the most difficult accounts to sort of bring back into a healthy balance are the ones that have high total A cost and a high ad sale percentage. Because if you have a very low ad sale percentage, so meaning like your account is not super reliant on ads, maybe you only have like say 15 or 20% of your total sales driven through ads. Technically speaking, if you turned off ads today, I'm not saying do that, don't do that, but if you turn it off, you're only affecting essentially, 20 to 30% of total sales, versus if you're running like a 70%, then you just effectively shut off 70% of your sales. Now, as we know, there's like rippling effects of completely shutting off ads, ranking, and all of that. So it's probably going to end up far worse than 70%, but at least it gives you an idea of how careful you need to be when making adjustments to the ads and how much of an impact that's going to have on your account.
Well, what's crazy is if you Momentum Commerce has a really cool tool about how you can see how much sponsored placements and versus organic placements is becoming. Amazon's becoming a more pay to play platform.
Yes.
Like on certain categories, like 2 years ago, it don't the top 10, like the page one used to only have 20% of the placements were sponsored, meaning that out of like if there was 50 placements, 100 placements on the page, 20 of them would be through advertising. But if you do it now, it's almost like 60%. So meaning
Yeah.
that, and there's very few organic placements. So where I'm going with that is, if you're advertising, if 30% of your sales are coming through advertising right now, that number is only going to go up. And if it's 70% now, it's only going to get more and more, because the organic placements are dwindling down so much now that that number is only going to go up and up and up, because it's becoming more and a more pay to play platform is what Amazon's turning into.
Oh yes, we have one brand that we're struggling with them. But basically, what happened? The other thing is really to know what the search pages look like in your space. That's so important. A lot of times in audits, I'll go through and I'll look at the top keywords. I understand that they're shopping on mobile. So mobile search pages are going to look the same. Desktop search pages don't look the same, and there are still people who shop on desktop. You can calculate it for your brand, but there's still a lot of searches coming through desktop. Some search pages on desktop are like a stacked view instead of the grid view. So that's something you want to take into account, because essentially that becomes, everyone talks about mobile, how like the top placements are so much more important on mobile because, again, you just have that one singular stacked page. Well, there are some search pages on Amazon where that's still the case, and a lot of scientific, some of the home goods, and then like we had a product where the category, they changed from a grid view to a stacked view, and then on top of it, wonderful of Amazon, they decided to put their sold by Amazon product in the top spot. So we went from potentially having 3 ad spots to 1 ad spot to Amazon or 2 ad spots to Amazon taking that 1 ad spot. And then so that single ad spot is now so expensive because everyone's vying for that 1 ad spot. And it's bananas.
Wow. That sounds bananas. Yeah, like, and when it comes down to it, that's where Amazon is becoming more and more of a creative platform. Like they're going more to the creative strategy, like launching sponsored brand video, sponsored display. Sponsored display is about to have video content within display ads now. Like Amazon's pushing to the more creative advertising way. And if you are not in the process of developing creative now, of getting videos, like if you don't have a video and it's 2022, let's be honest, you're way behind. But anyway, you should be producing multiple videos. That way you can A/B test on the sponsor brand video side, and for future events when Amazon launches these things, you're prepared because it is going more that creative direction, and you're going to need that other aspect to launch those other creative formats that Amazon provides.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. They're definitely moving more to that creative side, and they're really moving towards the ability for brands to tell their story and connect with shoppers. So, because one of the kind of outcries from a lot of the larger brands, and when I'm talking like larger brands, I mean like huge nationally recognized, internationally recognized brands, was the fact that they have their brand story. They have, they have their customer, their shopper advertisers dialed in. They know how to speak to their customer, and they really like to create that unique branded experience when shopping with their products. And there's only so much of that you can bring to Amazon, especially going back, even just 3 years. Like there was just you could kind of do store pages, and you could maybe drive a sponsored brand ad to a store page, but I think that was pretty much it. Like you have to play in the sandbox. Like your main image can't just completely showcase your brand logos or anything. Like you need to really fit it to the Amazon brand. And so I think, or at least from my perspective, what I see them trying to do is how can we allow brands to connect with their shoppers and tell the story in a way that is still very much within the Amazon sphere and still feels as if an Amazon shopping experience, but we do recognize that we need to balance on giving brands the ability to really build their brand, which is phenomenal. What we're seeing is that there's so many brands that are actually being acquired now that have been able to build out a unique brand experience just starting on the Amazon platform, which I personally think is super exciting.
True. I totally agree. And you had a really good hint about when it comes to ACOS. I still use ACOS, but not on an account level, which is I don't really use it. I like what you said about using it contextually. I use ACOS on a product breakdown and a format breakdown. So basically, I'll see, okay, between product A and B, what's the ACOS differences between product A and B? And then also, what is the breakdown by format? So I'm saying, okay, on sponsor brand video, product A might perform really well, but for sponsored product A might perform really bad. So I take a two-step analysis of like, okay, how are we doing on the format? What is the majority of the spend going to each format? What's the ACOS on that format? For example, sponsor brand video. And then taking the product level, saying, hey, maybe it's the product that's performing bad. And then taking a product by product level analysis. And then I'm able to do a little bit more actionable data. So saying, hey, let's push this format, let's push that product. And that's been super helpful when it comes to the advertising side to push those certain things. Because a lot of people just push campaigns. Because when they see the campaign view, that's all they look at, and that's all they push based off a campaign. But they're not taking a step back and aggregating that data and really providing strategies the problem. And that's something you'll be able to do within a dashboard or whatever. But that's going to really drive a lot of strategy in this.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because the other thing you have to recognize is like each product has a different margin. There's, product A might have double the margin than product B, and that should 100% be taken into account when we're talking ad strategy. I mean, like I was talking about total ACOS and ad sale percentage. I mean, like that's huge when you're talking about a per product level and things that have like wildly different shopper demand as well. I mean, that definitely is going to play into the strategy. And I think, like for instance, we're getting deep into the weeds. And again, I know it's like ads are the only lever I pull. That being said, I really focus a lot on contextualizing how the ads are affecting the account. Because the thing is that ads touch sales, and sales, there's like 20 other different inputs. So how can I really get better at contextualizing how the ads fit into this, and then providing insights into maybe how to get better health on the rest of the account. So there was some analysis we did recently on margins for a client, because again, we've been getting deep into margins, like how are the ads eating into the margins? And it was, because it's very possible to actually run a very tight ship on the ad side. So for instance, our total ACOS and our ACOS numbers were stellar, but the profit margins on the product was, actually lower, and it's making up the bulk of the sales. So we were able to go in and do an analysis on the margins, and it's actually our particular ads are only making up like say 7% of the total cost or fees associated with the product, but like product costs and Amazon fees were taking up like 30% or something, which is huge. So in that point, there's only so much levers we can pull on ads, but we're still needing to navigate that. Like if you have such slim margins on your product, it doesn't matter how clean you run it on the ads, you still might be significantly eating into your margins overall. And that's just something that you need to know. Because, if numbers look good, but the money at the end of the day in the bank is not what you want it to be, regardless if you're selling, say over 50,000 and you're getting like $1,000 back. Well, something needs to probably change.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to numbers, how often how often do you look at your numbers? Like, is this a process that, like, obviously, like, maybe we talk about, like, what's the short-term numbers you look at on a daily basis? And what's the numbers you look at on a weekly and monthly basis? What are the differences on those? Like, for example, I look at my repeat purchase rate every month, and I might look
Yeah.
at ACOS on a daily basis when it comes to my product or something. Well, what's the short-term and long-term numbers you look at on a daily and monthly basis?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think, so what we look on a weekly basis, I know some of the numbers we look on a weekly basis are definitely ACOS, total ACOS, and ad sale percentage. And then we look at those on a couple different time frames. So the other thing that I think is very helpful is instead of looking at a snapshot in time, it's getting that, again, contextualizing those numbers in the trends of the account. So say maybe the last 7 days we did this, last 14 days we did this, or no, last month we did this, and then month to date we did this. And then it tells you what are we doing right now, how are we trending versus last month. And then if you can get it versus last year, that would be phenomenal. It's kind of difficult when it comes to the ads and pulling data. So I like looking at those three numbers because, again, those give me a pulse. Those are what people refer to as like lagging indicators. So ACOS is like ad spend divided by ad sales. So if ad spend or ad sales are fluctuating, ACOS is going to catch that. Total ACOS, ad spend divided by total sales. So if either of those fluctuates, you get that context. Ad sale percentage is ad sales divided by total sales. So again, if ad sales fluctuates, it kind of encompasses quite a few numbers that, again, are kind of like high level. And then I've built out some dashboards that I think we pull numbers on a weekly basis. And I love looking at those numbers. Actually, I did a huge presentation for Wizards of Econ Group on this. But I looked at ACOS, total ACOS, and ad sale percentage. And then depending on how those are trending, if you recognize that those three numbers are actually calculated using other three numbers. So spend, sales, spend, ad sales, total sales. Then you say, okay, depending on how these are fluctuating, great. So my tacos went up. That's there was a change in ad spend or there was a change in total sales. All right, let me break those two out. Great. What happened there? And I like figuring out how can I zoom out in a way that tells me how I can zoom in. So if I look
100%.
at yeah. And then, because digging takes time. It takes a lot of time.
It does.
So if you can look at things in a format that allows you to contextualize things and then know where to dig, then it makes your life a lot simpler.
And making it like where it's a little bit more actionable. I really like that where you said like zoom out and zoom in, like where you're looking at the right numbers to saying like, hey, you're looking at tacos and saying like, hey, this is the broad spectrum of how Amazon sales velocity is. We're pushing ads, which push organic, and that's working as well. And then also having the ability to dive in as well. And that's what usually I do on my dashboards. I have multiple pages on my dashboards. And I'm pretty sure I've shown you my dashboards actually, where I have like, I think so. We've had a lot of conversations, so it's really hard to pinpoint of what conversation we had. But anyway, I have a broad, like a surface level dashboard for like a CEO. So if I was going through and they didn't want to know the nitty gritty, they just want to know, hey, are we going up or are we going down? There's people that want that. And I have a surface level dashboard saying, yep, sales are going up and to the right. We're doing our job. And then like that shows tacos and everything else. And then eventually on the other pages, that's where the nitty gritty comes into play of, hey, is our cost per click? How's that performing over time? What is our conversion rate on our products? How are those performing? And having it broken down by format, by what format's working, by what product's working, and even by what campaign is performing well, whatever that looks like. And we have it where we can break it down by account because every account's going to be different and going to need different
Mhm.
numbers. And I just do it based off when I go through it with clients, I go through with it based off what their knowledge is, not to overwhelm them.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the actual like going through like the numbers on a daily basis, I usually just look at like how are we performing in the last 7 days, 14 days, whatever it may be, on a product level basis and format basis, and then I push whatever that is. So that's kind of my short
Yeah.
term, long term of how I go through it with the clients.
Nice. See that? I think that makes total sense. Again, because the thing is, there's a lot of people who feel like overwhelmed, or I think it used to be people were like, oh, how do I figure this out? Or it seems like I can't get the data. Like the reports were a little iffy. And it's like at this point, there's just too much data. Like there's too much to actually go through or to learn. And then they're constantly rolling out dashboards, which is phenomenal. Like, don't get me wrong. I freaking love the search query dashboard and like the fact that we're going to be able to download it. And now we can look at ASIN level. It's like, this is phenomenal. Great. What if your account has thousands of listings and 20 different products per listing? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you really need to figure out what makes the most sense to spend your time on.
Yeah. And going to that, what if you were trying, how like 20% of the changes that are,
Yeah.
yeah, 20% of the changes that we make 80% of the results. What would you say? What is the main thing Amazon advertisers should focus on during Q4 that is going to drive those most changes? I know that's a huge loaded question, and there's a
Yeah.
lot to unpack there. But what would you say is the most actionable thing when it comes to making changes on the advertising side? Kind of what you were saying before.
Yeah. Definitely I'm going to say bid management. I think bid management is huge. Really understand and like we had talked about, like putting things in context and being able to contextualize, is this a cost good or bad? Because good and bad is relative depending on the account, depending on the product, depending on the strategy. And I think I had a post the other day on like really the trick. Like there's no tricks, but the trick is to get the right keyword at the right bid.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is that's a moving target continuously. So you gotta figure that out. So if you can have some sort of system that allows you to work on different strategies and different targets, like dynamically, that's going to be huge. So some sort of, I'm not a fan of completely leaving it to the robots, but some sort of leveraging, just kind of the ability to compute things at a large scale, like that is valuable. Just make sure there's somebody checking over the work and at least understanding how the system works, so what inputs to change. So I'm definitely going to say bids, and then just making sure that you have your campaigns built out ahead of time. Because we do have access to, like, the API contains hourly data now, but really honestly, if you launch campaigns day of, you're not going to get the actual data. You're not really going to see over time, how does this perform for my product, etc. So you really want to make sure that if you're going to do any testing, like, do it now. Do it now before things, the traffic comes in and things get crazy. And I would say those two things, if I had to 80/20 it, that would be my focus.
And I know there's a lot of people out there that swear by keyword level campaigns, and you might have a completely different take than what I'm about to say, but at its core, these like single keyword campaigns, like most of them don't get spend behind them, and a lot of people like at the end of the day, if you had that same keyword in a bulk campaign and you increase the bid, most likely it would have just the same effect. Amazon just cares about sales velocity, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of like single keyword campaigns. Some people swear by them like on their life, and I'm like, okay, sounds good. And if you put all those in the same keyword like in that one campaign, you'd probably have the same result. You can still increase. You can still do the top of search multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
You can still utilize that just the same way. Um, But yeah, what is your thoughts on that? I might have just completely just like, you might be like,
So
oh my
you're
gosh.
gonna open the rant box. So
Yeah.
my opinion is Amazon does not care.
Yeah.
If you had 1,000 keywords in a campaign, Amazon doesn't care. They say, do you have the bid and do you have the budget to run this? And do we think that your product makes sense for this search? Now, what I will say is there are things like placements, like bidding strategy, like budgets that are set at the campaign level that will influence how whatever is contained in that campaign performs. So on that level, it does become very important. So I'm not saying campaign strategy is not important. Don't like campaign strategy is so important. But what I'm saying is, as far as like, oh, if we put this in a single keyword campaign, if we put this here, if we put this there, like Amazon somehow is going to see it and like favor that. I'm not convinced. How the lens I tend to view it through is how important are these keywords? How important do I think these keywords are long term? I definitely want to think about it long term. So if we have a keyword that has like, say, over 100,000 search volume, we know it is a banging keyword for the product. I probably would create a single keyword campaign because I can give that one keyword the budget, because I can pretty much guarantee 100,000 search volume. The amount of clicks is going to be astronomical. The amount of spend that keyword needs to have is going to be astronomical. Do I want to have a budget that's going to run that continuously all day? Maybe not. So in those cases, if I give it its own campaign, then I can control. I can say, hey, I'm totally cool with spending like $100 a day on this. I don't really want it to go any further, versus that if that was in a campaign with, say, like 20 other keywords that I really did want to test, but maybe that keyword's eating up all the budget. So I get the logic of segmenting, and I do believe in segmenting, but I believe in picking your battles, because the problem with single keyword campaigns is if you put every single keyword into its own campaign, you will no longer understand or be able to comprehend what is going on with your account. Like, you just won't. I've seen those accounts. I know what's going on. I don't care how good your naming structure is. You're not going to be able to understand it. Your portfolio structure is going to be bananas. And if you scale that past one or two products, like you're going to look at your account and you're just going to log out, because it's just going to be overwhelming. So in that case, I would rather, again, pick my battles, determine what I feel is really important to the account, and then I view campaigns on like a grouping. So if I go through and I do a whole bunch of keyword research and I discover a new segment of keywords, maybe I'm looking at all of the ASINs that are ranked on this particular keyword, I'm going to put them all into a campaign, because I can contextualize, this is where I found these keywords, this is the strategy around them. So I group it by strategy, how important the keywords are, in a way that I can understand, and then hopefully later on scale, as in increase budgets, play with placement percentages. That's my...
That's your rant. That's awesome. Yeah, that's perfect. And is there anything else that you find very, very important, whether if it's related to numbers or Amazon advertising? Is there anything else that you want to make sure that you communicate today that is really vital for Prime Day number 2, Q4, that you think is a really important point that people should be doing?
Yeah, so the other thing I would say is going into if we're talking about specifically going into like Prime Day 2, I heard it called Prime Day Junior the other day. I thought that was his name.
I'm pretty sure the official name is Fall Prime Day, but I always call it Prime Day 2, but whatever.
No, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So I would want to look over. I'm not saying I would want to change or like reduce, but I would definitely want to look over the things that could potentially scale my bids or trigger my bids to increase, that I just haven't been paying attention to because they haven't been getting triggered. So for instance, dynamic up and down bidding, very high budgets that are not being spent. So for instance, if you set like $100 a day budget, but you're only spending $5 a day, the difference between what you're currently doing and what you've like enabled Amazon to do is a lot. So what happens is those things they won't trigger because there's just not enough search traffic for them to trigger. But come high volume days, they will trigger. And all of a sudden you go, why did my cost per clicks triple? I didn't touch any of my bids. That's why. So I would go through, I would look at dynamic up and down bidding. I would look at placement percentages. Just make sure they're all buttoned up. I don't have nothing against either of those two things. Just, be aware of them. I would also look at, and these are things I would just go through. I like bulk files, so I do it that way. Maybe there's another way or another report you can pull to do it. I would just go through, say, hey, what are my placement percentages? What do these look like? Do I have like really high placements that I just haven't checked in a while that are much higher than I actually would like? And oh crap, like the performance, I didn't even realize that was there. Like those are things we routinely check, but it's so often, like I get into audits all the time where just it's difficult. It's like one extra thing and you're like, oh, I got my bids done, I got my keyword research, like I'm good. And it's like there's all these little things in the account that you don't think to check. So placements, just go through sort dynamic up and down. Say, hey, where is this bidding strategy? And does it currently have the performance that I'm okay with? And if this increased a little bit, am I okay with that? And then I would also take a look at anything that has really high bids and there's a significant difference between your bid and your cost per click. Because again, a lot of those are like low volume traffic where you have a bid of like, True. I've seen it before where like the bid got up to like $7, but your cost per click is 25 cents. The leeway that Amazon has to raise that cost per click is significant. And again, it's not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just there's those things that can potentially trigger in the account that often don't trigger until the traffic comes in. And then all of a sudden you see things kind of go nuts.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's super helpful. And we have a question from the keyword. I don't know how whatever. I don't know how actionable this is. Let's just say that. How do we maintain keyword ranking? I think it comes from like a PPC sense. What would you say, like, there's like certain ways that I've seen certain advertising strategies where like clients will say, hey, I always want to be top of search and I want to have those top of search campaigns where they have the highest conversion rate on. What are your best practices when it comes to top of search campaigns? Are they too expensive? Do you see good conversion rates when it's top of search campaigns? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on all that? Like when it comes to increasing the multiplier to make sure you're in the top of search every single time?
Yeah. So I think they can work very well. Like how do you maintain keyword ranking is maintain high velocity of sales through that search. Like that's what it is in a nutshell. It's how you get there. That is the variable. And if you're fine with what it takes to get there, because there's a lot of times where we can, put a high top of search placements, which will significantly increase your bids, which significantly increases your cost per click, which increases the spend, and a cost is spend divided by sales. And if your sales are the same, but you're paying more to generate those sales, it's just going to naturally result in a higher A cost. Now, maintaining ranking on that keyword overall may make sense for the business. There are certain times where you run at a loss on the ads to be able to, generate more sales. That is a viable strategy. The variable becomes, is that something that you're comfortable with or not? And there's a lot of things I say, I know how to build it. Whether or not it is the right strategy is a lot of times more of a business decision than it is an ad strategist decision.
That's a good point.
So at that point, I think it makes a lot of sense to, just consult with the brand, make sure. And when we go into those scenarios, what we say is like, we will absolutely do this. We expect these results. We expect high cost per clicks. Because the one thing I keep telling people is if you look at anything that's dynamic, placement percentages or dynamic up and down, all Amazon is trying to do is say, can we get this top of search? There is no, they're not taking into account what the actual and like a cost is going to be. Like they don't care that you're just saying, hey, if you can get me here, I'll pay this. You're not saying, hey, if you can get me here and maintain a good a cost, put me there. So they're just saying, all right, cool. You want to get top of search? We'll give you top of search. You just got to pay for it. And then you have to you figure out if you're okay with paying for it.
True. That's a great point. Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on today. Please, Elizabeth, tell the audience how to find you, where to contact you for your company. Please tell them all that information.
Yeah, cool. So if you are interested in just hearing what I'm talking about, as far as the Amazon ads, LinkedIn is the best place to follow me. I put out the most content there. And then if you are interested in working with us and want to see what we're about, feel free to go to junglr.com, junglr.com. There is a form at the bottom. You can talk to me, and we'll see if we can help.
Cool. Thank you so much. This is the Failures and Wins podcast. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for everyone for listening, and we will catch you next time.